Welcome everybody to the third, the as of yet biggest fourth. Is it fourth? I should have more to drink. Fourth. Under the Influence event. I clearly am under the influence, as I hope all are you. All of you are too. There we go. If you want to talk about what's going on here, the hashtag is UTIOCT16, which stands for Under the Influence October 16. Suggestions for future hashtags can be written on the back of your name card when you put it away on your way out. Awesome. We've got Ross Bretmore, we've got Lucy Hall in the middle, and we've got Phil Trippenbach. Now, all three of them are here because influencer wasn't a thing in their lives until a couple of months or years ago, and has progressively moved more into the center of their professional and, I guess, personal lives in some way or another. Phil, your role has a grammatically questionable but very interesting head of influencer.
Yeah. So yeah, it does feel like they kind of missed the head of influencer strategy or head of influencer marketing, but it's a new position. Things are evolving very, very quickly. And basically I do the strategy part and the marketing part. And it's a little bit weird because it seems like the industry, the communications industry as a whole, is obsessed with influencer marketing right now, and it's mushrooming. So I used to be a journalist back in the day, and I used to work for the BBC. And back, was that a whoop at the back? Yeah. Yes. Represent.
TV license payer, right
Represent. All right. We were talking about this before, and the funny thing is that it feels right now as if influencer, whatever it is going through the same stuff as social media was in 2006, 2007. In 2006, 2007, everybody was like, MySpace, Bebo, Twitter, what is all this stuff? And I was a young guy at the BBC, and I was like, I know, I'll help. And right now, I guess what's happened is that it used to be that social media was just for geeks, and so there were only geeks on social media. And what has happened is the technology has proceeded up the adoption curve, and we've gone from an implementation phase into an exploitation phase. Is there anybody in the room who is not active on any social platforms at all? It's a dumb question for this room, right? But it's actually a dumb question for any room, and that's where the whole influencer thing comes from, isn't it? Because you can't have mass audiences on social media unless the technology is mass adopted.
Lucy is in charge of an awesome event called Social Day, which is exactly about not adoption, but exploitation, and exploitation for businesses and individuals that may not have quite the means just yet to go to Edelman for what they want to do. So tell us about Social Day and how you got to the event.
Okay, so Social Day it's been going for about a year now. So in December will be our 5th Social Day event. And it's a social media forum for SMEs. So it's for kind of your freelancer and micro business up to your, big 100 people, bigger kind of 100 people organisation, like a bigger organisation, but not, your corporates and that kind of thing. And at Social Day, what we do is we bring together a diverse range of people and a diverse range of speakers that teach these SMEs how to use social media and what they need to do with social media. And it's not just like, this is how you set up a Twitter account and that kind of rubbish. It's like, this is how I leverage Twitter to get more sales, get more, interest in my business, for example. So, that's what we do, basically. We get people who are within the industry or doing really well within their own businesses to teach people what they do so that they can take it away and go and do it themselves rather than spending a fortune if they don't have, the money to spend on social media, basically.
Cool. And last but definitely not least, Ross has come from a professional life that had digital quite at the core of the offering. And you're now basically the subject matter adjunct to an innovation. That's the word I'm looking for. To an innovation company. So digital and influencer work is now an essential part of innovation in some way, and that's what you do?
Yeah. So I kind of went to the dark side, and I now work for a large finance company. So my background is doing social media, digital disruption type stuff. And I now work within a company of 6,000 people for whom the idea of sharing stuff online is terrifying. Yeah, in finance, you protect your ideas, you don't speak openly online, but it's my job to give us credibility in the London fintech world. Hello. Yeah, so
Apologies, analog is not our strong suit. So
yeah, a big part of my job. I'll just speak loud. Yeah, so a big part of my job is to make us more innovative in the way that we work. So I kind of do influencer marketing from the inside out. So I persuade people that work for my company who know a shitload about regulation or finance technology to have a voice online, explain the benefit of doing that. And it kind of still boggles me that people don't get the benefit in that, and it's a constant kind of battle to get them to realise that. So I'm kind of doing this from the inside out, I guess.
cool. Well, those are our panelists. So, seeing as you've all kind of had a personal progression through how influencer marketing was part of what you do, I was wondering if you could share with us some perspective on how you've seen the change of that being something that only the really cool, really pre-early adopter kind of companies did, to something that is an essential part of the marketing or the marketing communications toolkit. How did you perceive that change? How did that go about in your day-to-day?
So we're in the shitty bit right now.
Right.
So any technology goes through this hype cycle, right? I think it's a Gartner thing, but whatever. You get this peak of inflated expectations, and you get into the trough of disillusionment, and then you get gradually into the plateau of productivity. And right now, as far as influencer marketing is going, the roller coaster is about to, or maybe we're already on the way down into that frothy kind of. I mean, look. When you say influencer these days, everybody thinks the crushed avocado on toast goji berry crowd, which is fair to a certain degree, but you get a lot of people who in their Twitter bio or in their in their Instagram bio, digital influencer. No, you're not. Sorry, go away. Right? Like if you're defining yourself as an influencer, then what you're saying is, I am masquerading in a way as a real human, but what I really am is just manufacturing a stream of content, and I'm inviting brands to interrupt that. So, influence is as old as we are. The right word whispered into the right ear at the right time has always made all the difference in the world. The only difference now is that the social relationships through which those messages travel, first of all, operate at scale, and secondly, leave traces. They leave traces that we can. So, there we go. Nice. Whatever you did, it worked. They leave traces that we can measure. They leave traces that we can track, and they mean that we can reach a lot of people. So look, if you've ever tweeted about goji berries, I'm just being glib here to prove a point, right? But the point is that influence right now has reached a level where it can really be of value in the communications world in a way that it wasn't before.
And value defined by it being measurable.
No, I think. Well, okay. I mean, the measurement is a function of the way that business operates. So if you can't measure it, it doesn't mean anything for business. So in a way, yes, but value determined by effect on people, right? We're Edelman, like any communications company, is in the business of getting ideas into people's heads. For clients who pay us to do that, and that's value, is getting a certain group of people to think a particular way.
But do you think it's just kind of become normal now, hasn't it? Like what you're talking about, you said we'd gone into a bit of a trough, but I kind of think we've got to a place where the things that you're talking about is just part of the kind of normal advertising mix. So what you'd call, I guess, through the line.
Yeah, but it's not. It will be, I think. But I think it's not stabilized yet.
But I don't know. I mean, my girlfriend works in fashion, and they've hired someone purely based on the back of her Instagram following, and she's got a big job, and she is there to give them credibility in that space. And it's almost like they paid for kind of, marketing throughout the year. And I think that's fairly common practice for large companies to hire those kind of people.
I am totally regretting that whole crushed avocado on toast comment now, because my glibness is going to come back to bite me. Look, I totally agree that there are certain areas where it's more mature and more developed. So fashion is absolutely one of them. I have colleagues who work on a lot of brands that are in the fashion hair care space. Obviously, that's a huge area. Food is another one. So yeah, there are places where influencer relationships and influencer marketing have I suppose proven their appropriateness more effectively than others, but the fixation on them has a risk of distracting us from the larger long-term value of it.
So if we take this down to someone who's just started a one-person business, and they say, all right, well, I have learned that I need to have a Facebook presence, and I learned that I need to have a Twitter presence because it is the easiest way for me to get my proposition out to the right ears, eyes, and so on and so forth. How has that attitude changed with more of an awareness to saying I can potentiate the amount of time I spend on this kind of stuff by using influencers or targeting specific relationships? Is that something that you come across as a question at your events?
No, most people don't know what influencer marketing is, to be honest. Most people, a lot of SMEs just don't know. And when they do, a lot of the time they will do it really well, actually, because they don't have big marketing departments and things like that to go through. So you'll find that if they do think they need to use something like influencer marketing, the buzzword influencer marketing, they like I said, they can do it really quickly. So, for example, they can just jump on a Twitter account and start reaching out to the people they know can make an impact to their potential customers, you know? And those people don't have to be people with 100,000 followers, for example. They just have to have enough of an engaged audience. Remember, it only takes one person, doesn't it? It only takes one person to be engaged to then make an impact, you know? So I think for the SMEs, most people aren't asking that question. I thought that was most people aren't asking that question, I don't think. But I think, you know, it's just a buzzword, isn't it, at the moment, influencer marketing to those people. What is it? How do I do it? And I think a lot of them are doing it anyway, if that makes sense at all. A lot of people are doing it anyway, and if they're not, then I'm sure that when they come to the next kind of social day, they'll learn how to do it. I don't know. You know what I mean?
In a way, it's a natural outgrowth of running your own business, though, right? I mean, if you ran your own business and you didn't tell anybody about it, then unless you were a hitman, that would be a bit weird. But you know, so it's an outgrowth of just kind of talking about it and being open about your business, right?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's a buzzword, but, and I know I keep saying it's a buzzword. It is a buzzword, but it's a hugely important thing that you go out and you reach out to people when you start a new business. If you don't go out and talk to new people and find, can you hear me?
We'll be back.
And find those influencers or those so-called influencers who have an impact, then you know how are you going to increase your reach and how are you going to increase your audience? Yeah.
So there's just a point to add, I think, to this is that the problem with the designation of influencer as a profession. Is that it so depends on what you're doing, right? Because if you're an SME and you make candles, then why would it be good for Zoella to have your candles in her videos? Do you know what I mean? She's got 10 million followers, but are they the candle buying sort? Do you know what I mean? Like, right? So you can be an influencer in a variety of different areas, and even the most influential people. So the President of the United States, Barack Obama, arguably the most influential person in the world, but if I was a hair care brand, I wouldn't want him tweeting about me.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? And it's not necessarily about how many followers someone has, is it? It's not about how many, how many Twitter followers they have, how big their reach is on Periscope and Facebook Live and that kind of thing. It's about, the influence they have within that target community that you are trying to, get to, basically. So exactly what you said. Yeah, exactly. For example, if I'm going to try and find someone for example, when I'm trying to find someone to speak at my social media events, I'm trying to look for social media influencers, people who have got a decent following on social media. But I'm not going to these massive people with Gary Vee and that kind of thing, because it's too far of my reach. It's going to be really expensive. I'm going for people who have got quite a decent audience, but they go out to that SME community, you know, which is exactly the right thing, you know.
So I guess in the topsy-turvy part of the curve that we're in right now, the question might even be, how many people that watch Zoella have never bought a candle in their life and have now started buying candles for no other reason other than them appearing in the videos, right? So that could happen effectively. So it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit about being clear of your objective when you choose your influencers. And that's where, you know, going by reach, for example, is not categorically the wrong thing to do. It just depends entirely on what you're trying to achieve for yourself or for your brand.
On the reach thing, that reach is nice if all other things are equal. But reach is just one of the dimensions. It happens to be the easiest to measure, which is probably why people have fixated on it first. But there are other things, right? There's relevance, there's authority. There are a whole bunch of other dimensions of influence that actually can be measured, that we measure, which affect a person's appropriateness to a particular brand.
I'd like to touch on a subject that we've kind of handled a little bit, and that's SMEs would be naturally very good at influencing or working with influencers because your person equals your brand equals your business to start with, right? So you've got a very, very short lead between those things. And the bigger a company gets, arguably, unless you're a Mark Zuckerberg-ish, those leads between the brand, the product, and the individual and the personality get bigger and bigger. How, Ross, maybe that's something you can handle. If somebody in a space that in finance, those things tend to be quite removed because brands by default are more impersonable. How do you bridge those gaps?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you work in a big company, you're not incentivized to be an individual, you're not incentivized to have an opinion. It kind of gets beaten out of you. And yeah, if you work in a big company, you know that you have a PR team, you know that you have agencies that do this stuff for you. So it takes, I guess, a certain amount of bravery to speak out online, to have an opinion about something. And I think to get this stuff happening for the big corporates, it's about permission rather than technical ability or what tools to use. I think the people that we're talking to know how to have an opinion on LinkedIn or Facebook, whatever it might be. They just need to be shown the way and normally see someone more senior modelling that behaviour. So someone like Zuckerberg, if you had him as your CEO, it sets a great example. If you've got someone who, you know, gets their emails printed out and given to them by a PA, it sets the opposite example, and that's the kind of culture you're fighting against. There you go.
This is something that a lot of clients come to us with also saying, look, we're great in terms of awareness. Everyone knows who we are. Everyone more or less knows what we do. But all things being equal, that doesn't make us a more likely candidate for their business than somebody who does what we do similarly well in a similarly sized company. How do you think you can leverage individuals within your business best to close that gap a little bit?
So I run the innovation team. We have ideas about financial products and services that are really boring. It's capital markets, investment banking. I get bored even thinking about it, but I said to them when they hired me, I'll only work there if we are open by default. So unless there's a legal reason that we can't share work, we stick it out there. And I think that's the only approach that you can take. So unless you're going to get sued for putting something online, you put it online. There's no new ideas under the sun. There's only people that deliver them or execute them. So I think if you take that kind of approach, then you will build influence, you will build, reputation and authenticity, whatever you want to call it. But it feels like the only logical shortcut to doing that kind of stuff.
I don't think it's very difficult to actually become an influencer. I think this is going to might sound a little bit crazy, but as long as you are creating really good content for your industry and you're educating people and you're talking to people and you're building relationships with the right people, that means, those other kind of influencers, you're talking to your peers almost. I think you can become an influencer very, very easily and in a very short space of time. You can certainly get on the influencer lists very quickly.
Hey, we spend long and hard time figuring out who those top 100 are every week.
Well, I mean, your list is a lot more kind of complex. The algorithm's obviously amazing, but you know, there's a lot of lists and there's a lot of things. And actually, creating a list is a really. I was just saying earlier that that Joe's strategy that he uses here is a really, really, really good marketing strategy, because what he does is he creates a list of influencers, and then influencers love to be told they're influencers, of course, so then they're going to go and share that post with everybody else on their Twitter feed and their Facebook feed, and of course, you know, it makes them feel good, and Joe gets more views on his blog posts, which in turn makes more people think, oh, this is a great product, I want to buy it, potentially. So, you know, that strategy is really good. I don't think it's that difficult to become an influencer if all you do is just be really valuable, create loads of really good content, and just don't, like, blatantly promote stuff all the time. I mean, I think that's good.
You have to know what you're talking about.
Of course you have to know what you're talking about, but I would hope, and I'm coming from an SME point of view, I would hope that if you are running a business within a certain area, that you would know what you're talking about, because otherwise... Yeah, exactly. But it's just about giving that, and I hope I'm not talking too much again, but it's about giving it away as much as as much value as you possibly can, and it does come back to you. It really, really does come back to you. And there's so many examples that I could talk to you about, but I'm gonna pass.
Yeah, we might come back to one of those in a second. So I think what's interesting that's coming out there, and that's something that perhaps hasn't happened as much as we would like to see it, is that there's actually symbiotic value for both the brand and the individual in people actually putting things online and creating content, for not just sharing it for the benefit of the company that they work for and creating content for the benefit of that company's proposition, product, service, whatever it might be, but also for the individual that might very well progress with them to other companies, other careers. And is that something that companies have yet to wake up to make actual use of the people that they have?
I think that there is a tendency to view influencer marketing from an advertising perspective, where openly or tacitly, a company is thinking, okay, wait a minute, this person has 16.5 million followers, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach those 16.5 million eyeballs by interrupting that flow of content, by putting some stuff in there or getting them to share my corporate video. Ain't going to work. It's an advertising mentality. It has to, influencer marketing, influencer relations, if it's done right, has to come from an earned sensibility. Just like you would entice a journalist to cover something. There has to be a reason for that person to cover it, and not everything is interesting to everybody, right? So you have to pick the right people to come over, and I would say that it doesn't have to be a two-way win. It has to be a three-way win.
Absolutely.
So it has to be of value to the company who's doing the influencer marketing. It has to be of value to the influencer who's being involved. It has to give them something, help them create some content only better than they were before, maybe. And it has to be of value to their audience. You know, their public. If the followers of an influencer see a post and think, hashtag ad, whatever, next, then that's wasted money. They have to be looking at it and going, wow, you know what? That brand actually did something really cool with that guy. Right? And the brand publication, the brand partnership can be open. You know, nobody likes football less because the game happens to happen at Emirates Stadium, right? The content can be valuable even if the brand partnership is totally overt, and it should be totally overt.
And that's interesting because I think there's influencer marketing should enable companies or brands to bring about content and bring about new things that from their own rows and from their own marketing or PR team might not be feasible, or they couldn't have thought of it, or it's just not part of their regular arsenal. So just because you said Emirates, you see how that works? So just to round it off a little bit, I'd like to hear maybe one or two examples from each of you where you think influencer marketing can be anything, can be pay for play, can be some, you know, snowballing advocacy underground thing from one end of the spectrum to the other. A couple of really cool influencer-led campaigns that you may have seen?
I'll give an example. It's a personal one, kind of relating to what we've been talking about. We put on an event recently at the Tate Modern about artificial intelligence, because AI is quite a big topic in finance, how you use it to make more money.
I hear Barack Obama is an influencer on that.
Yeah, yeah, they released a white paper today, and the whole company, like, you know, the marketing team in New York, we're all kind of bearing down on London. You know, we need to get these big names in finance. These, like, you know, people that we've heard of and everyone knows who they are, but they're quite generic and bland. And I had to really stick my neck out and say, those people cost a lot of money. They're not going to say anything insightful, and it's going to be like another tick on the box for them in their talking circuit. Actually, I can do a bit of digging. We can find 3 or 4 speakers that won't ask for money. It'll be mutually beneficial in a way that Phil's describing for them, for us, and for the audience. And it was quite scary for me, because I thought, you know, if it backfires and these people turn out to be dickheads, I'll lose my job. But we kind of stuck with it, and it really worked. And that kind of, you know, extra effort, and that, I guess, kind of me putting my neck out to say, we're not going to go for the big. I love how that works. Yeah. We're not going to go for the big name, the big numbers, and the big speaking fees. We're going to go for targeted people. The amount of people that came up to me after the event and says, you know, that guy that you put up there really knew what he was talking about, and I'd never heard of him. That was great. So yeah, kind of that's my kind of example.
I've got a couple of cool examples, but they're not like on a huge kind of scale. I just there's quite a nice one that I want to talk about. It's a guy that I've been working with. He came to me about 6 months ago, and he said, I've had this proposal from someone. I want to write. I've written a book, and I want to get it out to as many people as possible. And I don't have that much budget, but everybody needs to know about this book because it's going to change the world, basically. And I've had a proposal from someone, and it's saying I've just got to go on Twitter and like schedule all these tweets out and that kind of thing, and that's how I'm going to, you know, sell my book, basically. He said, but I want a bestseller. And I was like, okay. So I was like, the first thing you need to do is just jump on to live streaming and live stream every single day and get your message out to as many people as possible. So this guy, he went on and he live streamed every single day. And so it's maybe been like 5 months or something like that. He's been live streaming. And then anyway, the end of September, 30th of September, he launches his book. And he's reached out to people through live streams. So he's been in contact with other live streamers who have also got like a decent following. You know, they're having like 1,000 people, 2,000 people watching their live streams at a time, and then they're sharing his live streams, kind of thing. So he launches his book, and he tells everybody, go and buy my book, and then those kind of influencers in live streaming, he's sharing it as well, and he gets his bestseller, his #1 Amazon bestseller, and unknown to just one guy, he gets it published, and he gets his #1 bestseller, right? That quickly. And now he's just tonight, actually, it's just been postponed for a couple of days, is going on the ITV, is on ITV London News. ITV London News, you know, so this guy, he's just, you know, he runs a car repair business. He's going to love me saying this. And he's now just got a best-selling book and he genuinely thinks he can change the world. And he can, you know, you can. It's not that difficult.
That's a hard one to follow because the example that I have is not really a world-changing thing, but it is my favorite example of, I think, influencer marketing done really right. So one of our clients is PayPal, and they approached us because a lot of people think of PayPal as just that thing that you use to buy stuff on eBay. Whereas what a lot of people, including me until I got it in contact with this project, you can actually use PayPal to buy stuff in MeetSpace also. And that was basically their whole thing, is they wanted to reach 25 to 30-year-olds across Europe and get them to realize that PayPal is actually something that you can use to buy stuff every day. So we went away and we did some research, and we realized that by and large, 25 to 30-year-olds in Europe, first of all, really couldn't give a toss about personal finance. So there's your first problem. The second problem is that they don't really care about buying things. But what they do care about is experiences. So of the experiences that they like, the sort of the pinnacle apex experience is travel. And so what we did is we went and we found a travel blogger. And and we worked with this guy to create the first cashless pole-to-pole trip. And so what he did is he flew from Svalbard in the north, it's not quite the North Pole, but it's northern Norway, it's north of the Arctic Circle, and he stopped in 6 different places, and everywhere that he went, he met a local photographer influencer in that place, and he ended up after Svalbard, Moscow, Barcelona, a few other places I'm forgetting, Cape Town. He ended up in Ushuaia, the southernmost settlement in Chile, or in Argentina, south tip of South America, without spending any cash. This was the thing. It was the cashless pole-to-pole trip. It was all paid for by PayPal, all the flights, the accommodation, the everything. So, you know, the thing is that if you watch it, if you go to YouTube and you Google PayPal pole-to-pole, if you like travel, it's actually, you know, it's interesting. It's good video. You know, this guy actually went and he saw some really cool stuff. So it really was good for him. It made the brand look good, and I think it's good for the audience. You know, so that's why I think it's a good example.
Yeah, and I think that's all 3 of those really interesting examples of how to actually use other connected individuals who have a common interest and some shared equity in a subject to actually make good use of them. And I think personally the most interesting instances of influencer engagement are always those people that are willing to give away a little bit of control. It's comparatively easier with an agency because it's like semi-giving away control. It's more governed than if you just went out on your own. But you know, whatever gets you there, I think, as a company. And the really interesting thing is try to look up yourself examples of people, of companies that have set something up with someone who created content through their product, through their offering. Camera companies are good at this. North Face, off the top of my head, is pretty good at that. Patagonia, things that enable people who have something interesting to say more of what they want to say, is a really simple formula, I think, to really good influencer engagement. So with that, I needed at least one more tap. With that, I want to thank the panel for tonight. Thank you very much, guys. Big round of applause. Use the hashtag to tweet. Stay for the finger food. And yeah, enjoy yourselves. Thank you very much.